Hi, so it's Lewis here again, and I'm really excited today to have two guests, some of my wonderful colleagues who have a lot of experience and expertise in the area of reward. I think this is a topic we don't talk about enough. Many people come to work for their rewards. It's very difficult to have a healthy and productive life if you're not getting paid for what you do. And today I thought we would have an interesting conversation about how COVID-19 is affecting the world of reward and the future of rewards. So I've got both Lionel and Helmi here, both working with me in the Singapore business in Mercer. Lionel, do you just want to say a few words about yourself? What's your background? Give everyone an introduction.
Sure, Louis, and thanks for the invitation. So my name is Lionel. So I've been a lifelong rewards consultant. It's my area of passion. I've seen the market move from looking at salary structures and job grading to then, KPI setting, performance management, sales incentive, pay for skills. So the evolution of it, very interesting to witness all of this. And I like it because to be in Mercer, to be at the forefront of all this development.
Yeah, and having worked with you, I can tell everybody that there is really very few people who knows about this topic as well as you do. So it's great to have you here. Helmi, what about you? What's your sort of background and give us a bit of an introduction.
Hi, Lewis, and hi, everyone. My name is Helmi Yusoff. I'm the broad-based rewards consulting leader based in Singapore. So to add on to what I have said, we have definitely been seeing a lot of, I would say, more advanced rewards projects that we have undertaken in our spectrum, in our field of work. The work that we're doing right now, I would say more companies, they are looking at just beyond designing salary structure and designing sales incentive plan. They're really looking in many different areas of rewards. And today we'll share with you some of our point of view around what exactly other organizations have embarked on.
Right, awesome. So, here we are living the real COVID-19 life, all working from home. It's very, getting down dirty and practical. And, I think for many people, when we do our research with employees, leaders, organizations, one of the things that people really recognize is that this is having an economic impact all over the world, but, in Singapore, everywhere. And that's going to have an influence on the amount of money people have, the organizations have, and, how they pay. So, Lionel, just going to you, what's your sort of perspective on how COVID-19 is going to influence reward strategies and, how organizations adapting to that?
Great question. I think we have to think of it in terms of a timeline. So when COVID-19 hit us, I think the most immediate reaction that companies have is to think about how they can sort of manage the financials of the business. So how do you balance between empathy to employees and affordability from the business point of view? So that's where they start to think about, could we perhaps streamline certain processes, cut down on certain spending, and how do we sort of help our sales employees that might not be losing a large portion of their income right through this difficult period. So it was all about managing costs and maintaining employee empathy. But later on, they start to move out of COVID-19. This is where we are right now. And they start to think, how do we then set targets for the rest of the year? How do we manage performance? How do we engage the high performers that might have contributed exceptionally during this difficult period? Because our hands are tied when it comes to financials. And it's so hard to set targets. How do we manage performance management in the first place? So that's where they're struggling right now. These are the problem statements that comes to us the most. And then later on, we expect that they will start to think about also the future of rewards. Post-COVID-19, what do you do with job redesign? Already we are seeing that a lot of businesses are beginning to see their customers turning to online channels rather than going to buy stuff from either retail or departmental stores. So different businesses are hit very differently, but in some businesses, there's a large shift in consumer behavior, which then entails a change in their own internal employee job redesign. So that's where companies will hit in the long term.
Yeah, right. I mean, what's your opinion on this? COVID-19 obviously is creating a lot of uncertainty for organizations, and it's difficult to plan ahead when there's so much volatility and unpredictability. That's not uncommon in sort of recessionary environments. Do you see organizations responding differently, perhaps to previous recessions? Are there sort of different themes that are coming through in how they're designing their responses to, particularly from a reward angle, to the current crisis?
I think that organizations are a lot more empathetic this time round.
Right.
And I think that they are also a lot more holistic in terms of the arsenal that they have in dealing with this situation. So as an example, right, when I talk about empathy, we see a lot of organizations in dealing with their sales employees, they start to use what they call a pay it forward scheme. So they may actually provide some sort of guarantee to sales employees in this period of time when it comes to sales incentive, with the message that, as we move out of recession later on, we will raise the targets. We hope that you understand and help us, even as we take care of you during this period, you help the company to rebuild our financials. So there's a bit more empathy and humanness in this actually. And also, apart from looking at just compensation, organizations are having a greater arsenal of tools to manage through this difficult period. So they are thinking about how they could basically rotate employees across businesses. We've seen some businesses come together in sort of like a talent sharing pool so that they can redeploy and maintain jobs for employees basically.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, over the last few decades, actually, if you really look at the statistics, I'm a big fan of economics, actually, as I think if you're a psychologist, which I am, you also have to have an understanding of economics, because both of those things, incentives influence behavior. You need to understand what's influencing people's behaviors. And, we've seen wage growth, particularly in more developed economies, really stagnate. And labor productivity, I think, along with that in recent years. And part of that is perhaps because, some of the innovations that we've experienced in the last few decades have been impressive, but our social systems, the way that we organize, the way that, for example, people find work and get matched to work is still pretty inefficient. So, those sort of talent pooling consortiums, those different ways of engaging talent to work and matching it to work, perhaps are, innovative ways that we'll see new careers develop and, are more aligned to the kind of technology we've built. Sometimes I liken it to, when nations industrialized, they went from, apprenticeships and little workhouses, furniture was made by hand, to production lines. And that transformed the economy, but it also transformed people's relationship with work. And, I think it's interesting that we're seeing perhaps a similar transition with the new technologies, and the companies that are really accelerating are ones that often have a very different way of organizing, of thinking about the way that they develop products they use. The main conduit to market is the internet. It's just a completely different way of operating the economy. So, I think in kind, we need to be thinking differently about the way that we reward people. The relationship that people have with their work, and then how they get rewarded also needs to shift. So Helmi, on to you.
Lewis.
Yeah, sorry, Lionel, go on.
No, absolutely. And interestingly, recently I was just speaking to the CEO of a technology agency in Singapore who is driving innovation and technology across the nation. And that's the exact problem statement that he mentioned. So he echoes your sentiments in the sense that he sees the problem as that the agency could develop a lot of research ideas and put them into playbooks, right? So, but he needs local firms to take them up and commercialize them. But there is a gap between the know-how of the local firms and the ideas that this technology agency could develop. And therefore, like you said, it does shape the way that, you sort of mobilize your talent. So this agency has to hire a lot of technologies, a lot of innovators, and actually second them to these local firms, embed them within, and reward them on a gig economy sort of model so that these people can actually help the local firms to grow. And then for 2 or 3 years, they'll be embedded there, and then they will come back to this agency later on. So absolutely right in terms of what you mentioned, how exactly, yes.
Yeah, awesome. So, we were talking about, or we have been talking about sort of the future of this kind of work. We can see the direction the economy is going in, and sure, we're in a difficult period right now, but the overall trend still requires us to think differently about the way that we work. Perhaps actually economic trouble will cause us to be much more focused on our priorities and, accelerate transformation. So I know there are a couple of topics we wanted to talk about when it comes to the future of reward. Helmi, tell us a little bit about how reward is becoming more sort of, what's the word, idiosyncratic, more personalized, because, that's something we're really seeing, isn't it?
So some organizations, we have seen them making the move towards personalizing the rewards. And it's really based on the premise that they are treating the employees the same way they would treat the consumers. So the same way you try to listen to what exactly your consumers would want, the same way you try to really think about how you can create different products, different services to meet different consumer needs. The same way you think about that, you apply the same philosophy and the same theory into the way you treat employees. So I think this goes, and this is quite open. There is one particular organization, Unilever in particular. They've been very vocal and very transparent in terms of the way they have tried to personalize the rewards. And we've even sat in before to one of their key presentations where they really explain to us what exactly they're looking to do when they try to personalize the rewards. And some of the interesting things that we have heard and we have seen Unilever doing is specifically in the area of not just personalizing benefits, but also personalizing the compensation component as well. So they do give employees at the end of the year, for example, if you're given a 2 months bonus, for example, the employees are given the opportunity to be able to maybe park some of the money into long-term incentives if they want. They can cash out the money immediately as well in the form of bonus. Potentially, they can also think about spending that particular part of money that they're given, parking it possibly into benefit items possibly. Maybe they want to buy more days of leave or they want to take more time off for the next year. So they do give a personalization to employees really based on the premise of what exactly the employees would value, what exactly the employees would want. If the employees are thinking about staying in the organization long term, why not channel that money into long-term incentives where the reward would be a lot more exponential 5 years down the road? If the employees know that they are not going to be working in the organization for a long while, they can possibly cash it out now. For an employee, maybe where they are starting a new family and they know they want to be looking for more time off, they can channel it into the flexible spending account and potentially buy more leave days. So that was interesting finding that and hearing.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, how we take, we're like across all aspects of the way organizations function. We're thinking in a much more consumerized way.
Exactly.
Within boundaries needs to be flexible to me, tailored to me. It's all about me. How does it help me myself? People are becoming more selfish? I don't know, but certainly the technology enables them to get much more tailored about what they get, right? So
exactly, the technology and the communication was also very strong behind what exactly they're looking to do. They held a lot of road shows and a lot of, I would say, town halls in order to really promote what exactly they're trying to do and employees value what exactly they got out of the particular exercise.
Yeah, this whole sort of transition to how I can make more of my, how everything fits me better is very, it's like we're getting to the sort of apex almost of a very long-term transition from, seeing self and being selfish as like a negative thing, right? If you look back in history, being focused on self would have been seen as like, why would you do that? That's not what a good person does. Through to from the 80s onwards, this idea that if you're finding yourself, if you're doing what's good for you, that's the right thing to be doing in life. And it's just super interesting how that's now really manifesting in very practical and tangible ways in the way that we even think about our employment deal and what we want to do with our relationship with the employer. So much more power to the employee, much more customer centric. What about you, Lionel? So, what are you seeing in terms of future of awards and innovative projects that are happening and innovative ways of thinking about reward?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of things going on. And as Helmi mentioned, the personalized total rewards is something very new also. I have also seen this whole notion of pay for skills being something of an increasing emphasis that companies has. So I think the notion comes from the problem statement that often at times you pay top dollars to hire somebody into the company because the person is critical on niche skills. And then within a few years, however, you hire somebody else that comes in at an even higher pay. And employees often have this view that, if I really want to elevate my salaries to my own job worth, I will need to jump ship rather frequently. And especially in Asia, right, we see that because there's a war for talent in general, whenever employees jump, they get a 10-15% increment. And the faster somebody jumps, on the overall, his pay will grow much faster than somebody who's loyal. So it's an unfortunate event. The fact is that, as somebody who has been loyal to the company would have built up know-how on the clients, the company and the products, which are increasingly valuable to the organization. So as a result of that, we've seen a shift in the market where there's more focus on accumulation of skills now. It could be quite drastic. You've seen organizations taking a stand to say that, hey, look, we used to do performance appraisal by measuring KPIs and measuring accomplishment of those KPIs. But going forward, we're going to put an equal emphasis on skills accumulation. And to give you an example, you might have a group of researchers being put on an experimental project. Maybe in the short term, you won't see results. And maybe the project perhaps wouldn't materialize into success because it's experimental in nature. But the people who you put on that project nonetheless will be your best talent. You need the brightest minds to be there, because if the project materializes, you have a competitive advantage over your competitors. So therefore, how do you balance between these people are great talent, but on the other hand, you put them on a project that may fail, So therefore, organizations are starting to shift their mindset and going to a structure where they look at both achievement and accumulation of skills equally.
Yeah, and I mean, and you have to be very careful, I guess, because sure, risky projects need very talented people, etc. But serial failure is not a recipe for an organization's success. So you don't want to be sort of incentivizing people not to succeed. But at the same time, you're right. Like if you're taking on a very risky project and it's something that you're putting your good people on, you almost have to reward as much that they're learning as much as the outcome. So super interesting, my friend.
Exactly. We've seen one organization does exactly that, which is what you said. At the end of the project, right? They sort of, if the project didn't succeed, what sort of learnings could you derive from that? And they sort of pack the success of that assignment to also the learnings. So exactly right.
Really interesting. And so that then does connect to the broader topic of pay for skills, which it's really a trend because, as jobs change much faster now, you get job creation and destruction, project team work, much more common. Rewarding people for the job they have is becoming more difficult, I guess, or makes less sense, particularly in some organizations. So you're now trying to say, well, so what framework do we use? And it seems that skills is an emerging sort of framework for being able to reward people. Have you seen much progress in that area?
Yeah. I think the problem statement that you highlighted is very true. So historically, pay for jobs isn't new. I think in the past, internal equity used to be the highlight, right? So everyone is paid the same within a single salary structure. And then over the last 10, 20 years, companies have advanced to already pay for jobs, which is that they recognize certain job families like R&D or sales or key account management needing to be paid higher than the generic job families because of the supply of talent demand. And then, however, in recent times, we see that organizations start to be a bit sharper. And for two reasons. One is that, the jobs in an organization is different from the jobs needed by other organizations. So you can't just benchmark to the same job out there. You need to look at the skill sets that you need specifically for your organization. The second is that they want to promote learning, and therefore they want to move towards pay for skills rather than pay for job. To give you an example, we recently did a project with, let's say, with a country club. And even though they do hire from the same talent pool as the generic hospitality sector, to them, they see that the skill sets that they need actually could be quite different. So it's the same job, right? If you hire an F&B person, for example. But the thing is that in a club, the audience is a captive audience. You start to have a bit of account manager, if you will. You need to build a personal connection and personal relationships with your regulars, for example. Versus in a hotel, you start to deal with a large volume of different people. You almost have to sell to them, but you don't actually invest in very deep relationships. Right. So same job, but different skill sets. And it applies to every other job out there as well. So organizations are starting to realize that I cannot just benchmark to jobs out there. I need to look at the skill sets as a denominator to decide my pay. Yeah, so that's where the concept of pay for skills come in.
And it's, like we were saying earlier, it's a tremendously difficult challenge because, not least that we're all used to pay for jobs and that makes sense to us, but trying to tease out what real skills are worth. And, it becomes possible with the advent of artificial intelligence and, you know, just the data processing power that we have to kind of start to tease out from the huge volume of data we collect, particularly around what people are getting actually paid for their jobs, and, you know, then starting to match in the kind of skills they have. But we need the stars to align around assessment, around, you know, future skills needs, and also then obviously learning and development, so that we can understand, you know, what's worth investing time building in terms of skills. So it's really, really interesting.
It's a whole ecosystem.
It's been really, really interesting. So thank you so much for joining me. We're just coming up to the top of the hour. If people want to find out more about the work that you're doing, how can they reach you?
So you can definitely reach us on our LinkedIn account. Look for me, Helmi Yusoff, on my LinkedIn account. Or alternatively, you can reach us on our email as well. So helmi.yusoff@mercer.com.
All right. And Mr. Lowe, I assume the same is true for you. So I really appreciate all of your time and attention today. And, you know, this is a really fascinating space, really the main overlap between people, economics, you know, psychology. You know, reward is such an important component of people's lives. They don't even realize. And, you know, what we reward, why we reward it, is a lot we can talk about in this space. But really interesting to hear how companies are starting to think differently about how they pay. So great chatting to you, chaps, and well, I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thank you, Lewis.
Have a good day.
You too.